All right. Well, we're doing just a little bit of renegotiating up here. As you can see, welcome everybody to the Institute for Indo-Pacific Security. My name is John Gastrite. I'm president of IIPS, and we're so excited today to welcome all of you here physically and as well as those who are online. So thanks for joining us for today's special presentation of Space for the Indo-Pacific, Navigating Challenges and Exploring Opportunities. We're excited for all the hard work that's gone into this by our own Jennifer Hong and Suk-Jin Yoon. Suk-Jin, where'd you go back there? He's way in the back hiding. But this project wouldn't be possible without the hard work that the two of these people did. And I think what you're going to hear today is pretty exciting. We're going to talk about opportunities for civil and commercial space and making policymakers aware of the commercial and civil space opportunities that exist. And so we want to thank our government partners from NASA, from the Department of State, from the government of South Korea that are all here today and excited to get things started so that you can get a sense of the work we're doing. Again, at IIPS, this is a new name, but not a new organization. We had a rebrand earlier in the year in 2025 to, quite frankly, reflect the larger scope of work that we're doing. This is one of those projects that really drove that new brand and that new name. And so we're excited for the work, again, that our experts have done. And with that, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce one of those experts, Miss Jennifer Hong, one of the principal author, along with Suk-Jin, for this project. Jen, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hong, and once again, we welcome you at our institute today. As John mentioned, this is our first ever space event with our new entity as IIPS. Project 2049 Institute may be well known by many of you for our Taiwan and cross-strait issues. And I think this event, and you'll see on our website of the events and the papers and other things that we do, the activities that we do, this is just a demonstration that our work is expanding into the broader Indo-Pacific and all the issues pertaining to the security impacting the region. So your presence here, and also our audience and virtually joining us, some from on the other side of the world actually joining us today. So thank you for being here. Today, more than ever, the space domain is an indispensable domain for both warfighting and our daily lives, from communications to navigation, from economic activity to military operations. As the domain's importance grows, we are closely watching China and China's rapid advancement in space technology and capabilities. Russia, another formidable player with long history and proven capabilities, and Russia's growing expansion of relationship with North Korea and the impact that it may have on the region. China and Russia, with their anti-counter space capabilities and their increasingly aggressive behavior in the world theater, contribute to the intensifying competition to secure domain, to secure dominance in space, and also a domain that is ever becoming more crowded and congested. These trends underscore the need for shared commitment and coordinated policies among the United States and its like-minded allies and partners who also view space as vital to their national security and economic prosperity. Last week, as John graciously mentioned, and I will shamelessly promote, Suk-Jin Yoon, our policy analyst, and I published a paper called Space for the Indo-Pacific. You are able to access that report on our website, as well as there's a fancy QR code outside as you're getting your coffee or going by the registration desk, you'll find it there. We underscore the importance of the U.S. And the key allies in the Indo-Pacific working together to promote the peaceful use and security of the domain. So this event, we built upon that policy paper and designed to reflect the program was designed to reflect the full scope of the ecosystem of the space domain and the cooperation across 3 panels. So the first panel is going to be civil space. We have representatives from NASA and the State Department. They will explore international cooperation, diplomacy, governance in space, and how civil space engagement contributes to stability and shared prosperity. And then our second panel is on security and defense. featuring military attaches from South Korea and Japan. Our Australian counterpart could not join us today. He is actually very sick, so he sends his regrets. We'll address how allies and partners are responding to the evolving security environment, including the role of space capabilities in deterrence, warfighting, and regional coordination. And then our third and final panels, we turn to commercial space with our industry partners. We know the responsibility for shaping the future of space domain extends beyond governments alone, and our industry partners have been helping shape the future of this domain by providing speed, agility, and scale. So we are excited to have all our panelists here. Before jumping into our first panel, I do want to say big congratulations to our team. We are small and mighty. All of us have a little pin here, so if you see them, do congratulate them for this event as well. I'm up here representing them all, but this could not have been possible without them. And the support of the Korea Foundation. They believe in the importance of this issue as part of the U.S. ROK Alliance and for the Indo-Pacific broadly. So we want to thank them for sponsoring the research project as well as this event. So with that, I'm going to invite my panelists to come and take a seat while I introduce them. So Kathleen Karika, she is the Senior Advisor of the Office of International and Interagency Relations from NASA. Before joining NASA in 2025, she spent over a decade in the U.S. commercial space industry where she led international business development teams. She most recently served as a Director of Research Operations at Virgin Galactic, and she also has many years of experience through Maxar, Lockheed Martin. The list goes on. NASA Ames Research Center, U.S. House of Representatives Science, Space, and Technology Committee. She is a proud Texas A&M University alum for her bachelor and master's. And then we have Jonathan Adams, who is not Michael Overby. He is a pinch hitter today from the State Department, who is the lead for the East Asia Civil Space Cooperation at the Office of Space Affairs. Thank you for being here today. From 22 to 23, he did a mid-career fellowship at the George Washington University and conducted a research on U.S. space policy, PRC space program, and emerging technologies. So you are the perfect person to be here. So thank you. As a Foreign Service Officer, he served on many positions, including the State Department's India desk, U.S. consulates in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and as the first reporting officer at Wuhan. Yes. And he mostly recently served as a political unit chief at the Embassy of Cambodia. Before State Department, he was a Taiwan-based journalist covering political and economic issues for a variety of publications, Newsweek International, International Herald Tribune, and Christian Science Monitor. So with that, I am going to invite Kathleen to come up here, deliver short remarks, and then same to Jonathan, and then we'll sit back down and do some Q&As together. So thank you.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to John and Jennifer and the IIPS team for inviting us to speak at this panel today. I'm honored to be joined by our friends at the State Department, who we enjoy a very close relationship with, especially on the Artemis Accords. So as I'm sure everybody heard in the news, we had our new NASA administrator start about a month ago. It's hard to believe that it was only a month ago. He certainly hit the ground running, as I'm sure you've seen in social media, and we are working feverishly to execute President Trump's vision to return astronauts to the moon by 2028 and also kick off that golden age of exploration. Today is actually the one-year anniversary of the start of President Trump's second term. Over the course of this first year, we've had two major space-related executive orders. The first is related to commercial space deregulation and addresses many items industry has been flagging for years. Personally, just as Jennifer mentioned, having spent my entire career in the industry, I am very excited about the opportunities that are in this EO, and I suspect if you talk to other people in industry, they're also very excited about the potential that's going to come out of it. The second executive order President Trump signed laid out his vision for his second term as it relates to space. We're going back to the moon, this time to stay and to create a permanent lunar base. We're enabling space nuclear power far beyond what we've done to date. We are developing new technologies to understand the mysteries of the universe, and we're igniting a thriving and enduring space economy. We will accomplish all of this by working together with industry, academia, and like-minded nations, which is exactly what today is about. To this effect, last year while in Japan, President Trump and Prime Minister Takaichi reaffirmed our long-standing civil space collaboration. As you may know, Japan is one of only 2 countries that collaborates with NASA across our entire portfolio, so from technology development to aviation to our space missions. While in the Republic of Korea, President Trump and President Lee pledged to expand cooperation in outer space. And at the International Astronautical Congress, or IAC, in October, NASA signed its inaugural major framework agreement with Australia to establish a formal structure for future joint space activities. Now, as we enter 2026 and celebrate America's big 250th birthday, NASA is reigniting the explorer spirit that founded this nation and bringing our partners with us as we return astronauts to the moon. As early as next month, we will launch the Artemis II mission from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The rockets roll out over the weekend, and everything went well. We'll have 3 American astronauts and 1 Canadian astronaut flying around the moon for the first time in over 50 years. And these astronauts will be going further into space than any human's ever gone before. For Artemis II, we also made a special opportunity available to the Artemis Accord signatories. 4 partner nations, Korea, Argentina, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Germany, will launch their own CubeSats on Artemis II. And as was the case during the Apollo missions, Australia will once again provide critical space communications support for Artemis II through their historic ground systems network. Looking to future Artemis missions, Japan will be critical for the long-term success of Artemis through its pressurized rover program. This rover will allow the astronauts to be able to explore the lunar surface and conduct critical science over the course of multiple missions to the moon. With this contribution, Japan became the first nation the U.S. partnered with for lunar surface astronaut opportunities under Artemis. Continuing in our exploration programs, we have long-standing cooperation on the Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter, KPLO, through NASA's ShadowCam, which images the lunar surface to help identify future landing sites. The Commercial Payload Lunar Services Program, or CLPS, sees U.S. companies provide payloads with opportunities to land on the lunar surface for a fraction of the historical cost of doing that amazing work. In the coming years, CLPS will include Korean and Australian science Pathfinder payloads. Meanwhile, our partnerships in low Earth orbit continue on the International Space Station, and in the future will continue on commercial space stations provided by private industry. We were so excited to see Japan's first HTVX. You always want to say HGTV for the Americans. It's different. It's not related. First HTVX cargo mission to the ISS last year, and look forward to them supporting the ISS through 2030. Last year was also a big year for human spaceflight in the Indo-Pacific. We had 2 JAXA astronauts on the International Space Station. We had very proud Korean-American astronaut Johnny Kim, and we also saw the Indians return to human spaceflight for the first time in 40 years with their astronaut on the AX-4 mission provided by Axiom to the International Space Station. Moving to science, it's great to have such a long list. Sorry, Jonathan, I'm gobbling up all the good ones. Moving to science, in 2024, NASA conducted the Asia Air Quality, or Asia AQ, airborne science mission, which used NASA aircraft to investigate sources of air pollution in urban areas in the Indo-Pacific. We particularly like this program because it brings in quite a few of our partners in the Indo-Pacific. We did this in collaboration with partners from Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Thailand. In 2025, I had the honor of attending the NISAR launch from India. NISAR was NASA's largest collaboration with ISRO to date, and it's going to be supporting disaster prediction around the world. Looking ahead to this year, we will see the launch of JAXA's Martian Moon Exploration Mission, which includes NASA's Manganeer spectrometer, or eyeglasses in Japanese. I've been assured that my pronunciation was flawless, so I'd just like everybody to know that. This historic mission will bring back the first samples from the Martian moon, Phobos. NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope will be NASA's great big telescope, following on the legacy of Hubble and James Webb, and is on track to launch as early as fall 2026. Designed to survey billions of galaxies and uncover thousands of exoplanets, Roman will help answer some of the biggest questions about our universe, and it will do so with the support of international partners like JAXA. I will conclude by mentioning one of my favorite NASA initiatives, which is the Artemis Accords, and I know Jonathan will touch on too. When we explore together, it's really important that our partners share our same values. Again, the crux of the discussion today. That's why in 2020, towards the end of President Trump's first term, we created the Artemis Accords. And I know later on, Sean Wilson will be moderating a panel, and he was also very instrumental in bringing on more Artemis Accords partners. When we created the Artemis Accords, it was the US along with 7 partner nations, including Japan. And just recently, we announced the 60th country that's joined, and I'm expecting many more to come here very soon. Countries who join the Artemis Accords are committed to the safe, transparent, and peaceful exploration of space. These principles are being incorporated into NASA's and our partners' long list of upcoming exploration missions. I expect that we will see even more collaboration between the signatories on the moon in the future. I know that was a lot of ground, so I will save any further details for the Q&A. And again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. It is always tough to follow NASA at events like this, especially when you're from the State Department and their incredible missions that we have planned, including Artemis 2, which I'm very much looking forward to as well. So anyway, thank you for the introduction, Jen. Thanks to the Institute for Indo-Pacific Security for this opportunity. And I'm honored to be here today along with Kathleen to talk about how the U.S. is promoting cooperation on civil and commercial space in the Indo-Pacific. So I just want to expand a little bit on Kathleen's remarks about the White House priorities and vision for American leadership in space. I'm then going to talk about the State Department's role in carrying out that work and provide some specifics on cooperation with Japan, the Republic of Korea, Australia, and other Indo-Pacific partners. And then finally, I'll just sketch out a few thoughts on what we see as the most promising areas of cooperation going forward and how we see the future of space cooperation playing out in the Indo-Pacific. So first, the recent executive order ensuring American space superiority. So as Kathleen noted, this sets out a bold and ambitious vision for maintaining and expanding U.S. leadership in space exploration and use. Vital to that effort are international and commercial partnerships, and especially unlocking the full potential of our private sector, the world's best and most vibrant private sector in the world. So this is where the Space Department comes in. As the U.S. government lead agency in foreign affairs, we are also the lead, along with our colleagues at NASA and the interagency, on space diplomacy. What is space diplomacy? We define it as the practice of engaging the international community to advance U.S. interests in space and to make sure America continues to lead in space. Above all, we want to ensure that American personnel and American spacecraft are safe and secure, and that we continue to have safe access to outer space. We also want to minimize the potential for conflict in space before it happens. So at the State Department, we work through our embassies and posts overseas to promote those interests abroad and cement bonds with our allies and partners. And with thousands of officers posted overseas, we are on the front lines of all of our diplomatic efforts, and that includes space diplomacy. Increasingly, we're also working very closely with partners in the private sector to tap opportunities in foreign markets and make connections with foreign governments and commercial customers. And we're working hard to increase foreign investment in U.S. space markets. And then finally, as Kathleen talked about a bit, we work through coalitions like the Artemis Accords to lead the way on setting global standards and guidelines for peaceful space exploration and use. So I'll describe a bit more about how the State Department looks at the world and the Indo-Pacific region in particular when we think about space diplomacy. So our office works to carry out not just the executive orders that we've mentioned, but also, of course, the recently released National Security Strategy. And I'll highlight that, of course, this strategy places a strong emphasis on Latin America, That's a region where we are working hard to engage emerging space nations like Argentina and Chile on civil space partnerships and to promote commercial space cooperation. This is especially important so that we can offer our partner countries in Latin America and Africa an alternative to China's so-called Space Silk Road. Through this, China provides lavish aid, training, and infrastructure assistance, but it also creates dependencies on untrusted Chinese technology and encroaches on countries' sovereignty. Keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open is another top priority from the strategy. The strategy states the Indo-Pacific is already and will continue to be among the next century's key economic and geopolitical battlegrounds. So for our space diplomacy, the strategy guides us to redouble our work to boost the American commercial space sector's exports and services to the region, whether that's Earth observation satellite data, GPS navigation services, or satellite internet services. It also includes, for example, gaining support in the Indo-Pacific for the U.S. private sector-led next-generation commercial space station concepts that will replace the International Space Station in 2030. So we're helping promote partnerships and investment in these concepts worldwide to make sure that the United States doesn't cede Earth orbit and all of its economic and scientific potential to China when the ISS deorbits in 2030. We also want to increase burden sharing with our foreign partners on these critical projects. So I'll talk now just a bit about our space cooperation with Japan, the Republic of Korea, Australia, and other partners. Kathleen already talked about our partnership with Japan, one of our closest partners in civil space, vital partner on the Artemis missions to return humans to the moon and beyond. The Republic of Korea is another strong partner in space, not always in the ways that make the headlines, but for example, our countries are working very closely together to ensure that South Korea's KPS or GPS equivalent will be fully compatible with GPS when it goes online, similar to our work with Japan on its QZSS system. So we're very pleased to see our partnership also with other countries like Australia and outer space expand. Australia is building up its emerging civil space program and commercial space sector. Kathleen mentioned the framework agreement that we're very happy to see, and that should be going into force soon. We have many other important partners in the region. We've stepped up civil space cooperation with India. New Zealand also plays a critical role in the U.S. space economy. One of our most successful companies, Rocket Lab, is now launching out of both countries thanks to our cooperation. Taiwan is a valued partner, and we welcome our growing commercial space linkages. We do have long-standing civil space cooperation with Taiwan, most notably through NOAA's partnership with Taiwan on the cosmic Formosat satellites. And finally, we work with other partners across the region to align space policy and regulations, forge commercial linkages, and gain support for U.S. space leadership. Those partners include the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, all of whom are laying the foundation to develop significant capabilities in space. And so in line with the recent executive order, we do look forward to seeing all of those partners invest even more in American space markets. So for my last section, I'm just going to say a few words here about how we see future space cooperation between the United States and its partners playing out in the Indo-Pacific. So we want to cement and further expand relations with Japan and India, and we do hope to do so at bilateral space dialogues later this year. The Artemis Accords, which Kathleen touched on, are an important piece of our space diplomacy toolkit. We co-lead with NASA all U.S. outreach and engagement on the Accords. We intend to continue translating the Accords into action. Through the Accords, we're leading and shaping guidelines for civil space exploration that are going to keep our astronauts safe as they set foot again on the moon and journey on to Mars. The Accords have seen growing support and acceptance in the Indo-Pacific, with the Philippines and Malaysia becoming signatories last October, joining other regional signatories, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, South Korea, and Singapore. These countries know why joining the Accords matters. Malaysia is implementing its national space policy. The Philippine Space Agency is preparing to launch its most sophisticated satellite to date. And as both of those countries expand their space capabilities, They're now part of a global coalition, the Artemis Accords, of advanced and emerging space nations who care about doing space exploration safely, responsibly, and in a way that fosters innovation and growth. So their desire to become signatories demonstrates the rapidly growing space capability of Indo-Pacific countries and the urgency they see in keeping space peaceful and transparent. And with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak and look forward to the next section.
I'll take that. And you can have this one. All right. All right. Well, thank you both for that opening. Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you just got off. You just sat down. You mentioned China and the Space Silk Road. How are we doing with our competition with China in civil space? Let me leave it open up there.
Just a small question.
Small question.
No, thanks for the opportunity to address that. I'm going to start just to kind of reiterating a bit what we just talked about, the executive order on ensuring American space superiority. Our marching orders from the White House are very clear, and we intend to keep America as the leader in civil and commercial space. So that's the first thing to mention. It is certainly true, as we look across sort of the range of civil and commercial space activities, that we do see growing competition from China on all fronts. Look, we believe that competition is healthy, can be healthy, but it's got to be done in a safe and a more transparent way. So we're happy to compete. This is an area where we are going to make sure we lead, but we have some serious concerns about China not being as transparent as it could be with its space exploration activities. So whether that has to do with insufficient launch notifications, whether it has to do with the uncontrolled re-entry of Long March rocket boosters, we want to see China becoming more transparent, and we hope that it will. I welcome Kathleen's thoughts as well. But clearly we have some very stiff competition with China in civil space and with exploration. We at the State Department are going to do everything we can to support NASA to make sure that we continue to leave and that we get to the moon before China does and on to Mars. And look, our view is that this particular competition has real consequences. From the State Department, we offer and focus on norms and standards. We have real concerns, and again, going back to concerns over China's lack of transparency. We have concerns that if China gets there first, it could potentially set some standards that might be not beneficial for American civil and commercial space interests. So.
Thank you. Maybe just to add on to what Jonathan said, and thank you for that. The administrator has been very clear that we are in a second space race with China, but of course it's not really one-to-one, right? We've already gone to the moon, and we did it 50 years ago with huge success. And now when we go back to the moon, again, it's for a permanent presence. It's also to the south side of the moon, which is a much more challenging location. So we're very excited about our mission, and we're bringing our international partners with us. And again, it's a coalition now of 60 countries that potentially could be collaborating with us on the moon. That's massive. So NASA, of course, does not collaborate with China. We've got the Wolf Amendment that we're very supportive of. And we are looking forward to many more countries continuing to join on to the Artemis program. We have, and we'll touch on it in some of the follow-on questions, but we've got a lot of opportunity to bring even more partners with us, and we're excited for them to be joining us on the moon.
You mentioned the national security strategy. You also talked about the executive order, one in August and then one in December. I think that really highlights President Trump's focus and commitment to the outer space. You have a new administrator, so I would love to hear, to the extent that you could talk about his priority, his vision, how that aligns. And I know you've been very busy, so anything that you're willing to discuss with us, and then how are we envisioning our leadership I know that there are lots of partners coming along and wanting to participate in different activities. How are we leading well with our allies and partners?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yes, Administrator Isaacman has all of us working so diligently to make sure that we do hit that 2028 timeline for the moon. So perhaps it's worth mentioning. So we've started a road trip throughout all of the NASA centers. Last week, I had the honor of joining him kind of through the Southeast, if you will. And while we were at Kennedy Space Center, we met with SpaceX and Blue Origin, who are two fantastic U.S. companies, and talking about the Human Landing System program and making sure, again, that we're going to be hitting that 2028 timeline. So Administrator Isaacman is focused on making sure that NASA is very focused on our mission, but also that all of our industry partners are also focused with us, and that we're making sure collectively that we do maintain that American superiority in space. In terms of how we bring our partners with us, we are very mindful of the architecture that we're designing for the moon. So we already have quite a few international partners, as I touched on, in the Artemis II mission. And then just recently, we published our Moon to Mars architecture document, and we've been publishing that for the last couple of years. And that document is kind of the first step, and then it's followed up by a workshop with industry, and then another workshop with our international partners to get their feedback on one, the architecture overall, but then two, where do they see themselves integrating in? And we want to be mindful of, we've got some really big programs like the pressurized rover mission with Japan, again, a critical program for us, but then what are also some of those smaller touch points and opportunities that we'll have for countries of different size. So we are interested in hearing from our international partners. What would you like to contribute? Where do you think your strengths are? And folding them into the architecture as we continue to develop what are we going to have on the lunar surface.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that, but I just add from the State Department's perspective, we do sort of some of the less glamorous work, perhaps, supporting NASA, of course, but we do things, often it's more about regulations, right? And in foreign markets, trying to make sure that, especially our like-minded partners and other countries, when they write their space laws, when they come up with their space regulations, that they are aligned with ours, that they're compatible, that they take the private sector's interests into account. We don't want to see over-regulation that stifles American free enterprise as we're working to open up those markets overseas. So we work with other interagency partners as well to do that and to talk to those foreign governments to hopefully help shape their regulations.
Jen, can I maybe add on too? So you mentioned President Trump's executive order from December, and that's a great opportunity on how NASA and the State Department actually work together on these international agreements. So President Trump has asked us in that executive order to make sure that the agreements that we're putting in place with our international partners are mutually beneficial. And that's a great thing that we work with the State Department to make sure that, again, the countries that we're working with are like-minded and aligned with what the U.S. would like to see on the moon. It's important that it's a symbiotic relationship and not lopsided one way or the other. So that's equally a call to action too from our international partners when you're doing this brainstorming on how you can work with us. What are those incredible capabilities that you have domestically that will benefit both sides? So we've got a symbiotic and balanced relationship.
One of the big things that your office does is host the civil space dialogues with with countries. How do they come about? How effective are they? I know ROK had one and Japan has one. Just would love to hear your insights. How do they come about? How do they continue? And how do action items get implemented?
Sure, thanks for that. Yeah, so we have a convening role that we help play in bringing the interagency from our country and then close allies, like-minded partners together to the table for those dialogues. We do have very important dialogues with Japan and Korea, for example. We are trying to, number one, prioritize those dialogues a little bit and really focus on the ones that we think can drive value, including value for our private sector. Also, I should say, as part of these dialogues, we're increasingly looking to bring in the private sector. So one of the things, for example, that we're doing that's a little bit outside of maybe some of that formal dialogue structure, but we are doing things like a delegation we sent to Tokyo last summer, organized by the State Department, in which we brought our commercial space companies to Tokyo to talk and interact with Japanese government and private sector officials. And for example, I had mentioned earlier about promoting investment and partnership in the next generation commercial space station concepts. So this event last summer in Japan may have been one of the first times when we actually had representatives from all four of the American companies that are leading those very exciting next generation commercial space station concepts. And that's Axiom, Blue Origin, Vast, and Voyager. All there to talk about their concepts, to make the pitch, to get even more partnerships. Very happy to see we already have some very close partners from the Japanese and Korean private sectors that are participating in those projects. So increasingly, we're leaning in to commercial diplomacy as well, and really bringing our private sector in to those dialogues.
I'm going to press in a little further on that. How do companies get to be on your list? I'm sure our company friends are very interested.
Not to put me on the spot right now.
Right.
Yeah. No, we are very inclusive. We have very good relationships across the commercial space sector. I have somewhere here in my talking points the number on the number of space companies we've met with just in the past year. I think it's something like 100, representing about 85% of the U.S. commercial space sector. So we were already very focused on bringing in the private sector to all of our dialogues and activities. And again, with this new executive order under this administration, I would say we are ramping that up even more, just redoubling our efforts to bring in the private sector.
That's amazing.
Jen, can I jump in?
Absolutely.
I had the honor of attending the Thai U.S. Civil Space Dialogue back when I was in industry in 2019. And I would just encourage the U.S. companies that actually Travis and I went on it together. We rode an elephant together. Yep. They're wonderful. They are really, really great opportunities. And so I would just encourage U.S. industry, reach out to the Space Affairs team at the State Department. You're welcome to reach out to us at NASA. There's also the Office of Commercial Space under the Commerce Department. These delegations are really fantastic opportunities to engage with the international government. So very supportive. You guys do a great job.
Yeah, and I thank you for mentioning that. I'd be remiss if we didn't also acknowledge our colleagues from Commerce. We're working very close with. They have their own officers overseas, and we're working hand in hand to really promote American space companies and space solutions in foreign markets.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about international norm setting and governance and norm setting, and why that's important for us to be first to the back to the moon and to Mars and so forth. So, what are we doing to promote leadership in international settings? UN, we have APRSIF in Asia. Would love to hear. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, international organizations are definitely much more in the State Department's wheelhouse. So maybe I'll just tee it up and say, going back again to the Artemis Accords, we were so pleased to have Malaysia and the Philippines join on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit last year. And that was with direct engagement from the White House. I mean, we've got great attention from OSTP in particular on supporting the Artemis Accords, and we're very thankful for that. We're also really excited now that we're reaching this huge mass of countries joining the Artemis Accords. Over 50% of the countries that are members of UN COPUOS are also members of the Artemis Accords. So when you're talking about what are those values and like-minded principles that we bring, not just to our exploration programs, but also to the international organizations, the Artemis Accords signatories are going to be having a nice unified voice.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add on to that. Look, I'm going to delve a little bit into space law and space nerd territory here for a second before coming back. But look, let me say first what, from our office and the State Department's perspective, we think we don't need, and that is some kind of new global treaty. So our position from state's perspective is we have four core treaties, mainly the Outer Space Treaty. We think those are sufficient for what we need to do, and we think we actually just need to work harder on building on that robust legal foundation. So from time to time, we do get that question, why aren't you working toward a new treaty? Look, so around 2020 and the years immediately before that, we did see an uptick in lunar missions, not only our own, but from other countries and companies around the world. So we did see a need for some more best practices and guidelines. And that's where we decided that we needed the Artemis Accords. That was the genesis of the Accords. This was a state and NASA partnership all the way from the very beginning, initiated in close consultation between our two agencies. And then really the text was negotiated with 7 other countries, and now we've got 60. Look, and this is such a testament to the global appeal of the Accords vision, and also to the U.S. space leadership and the diplomatic reach of our efforts. I'll just say 2 quick things about what the Accords has been doing and what we've sort of produced so far. I mean, the way we talk about this a lot, and I'm part of a lot of the briefings where we introduce the Accords to potential signatories. We describe them as, look, what they're really doing is taking small steps beyond the Outer Space Treaty. They're grounded in those treaties to start talking more practically about how we're going to implement those. So for example, one thing that the Accords that has come out of the signatory group is the United States and several of our partner countries in the Accords have started making public, voluntary, but public reports out to the United Nations on the lunar missions that we have planned. And we're describing when we're going, where we're going. And this is for the purposes of transparency. It's just a core tenet of the Accords. And it's also for the purposes of deconfliction, one of the Accords' other key principles. Unfortunately, we haven't seen China and some other space-faring countries be quite as transparent. But that is what the Accords is all about, is modeling some of those best practices, modeling transparency, and starting to shape some of those guidelines to make sure that as we go back to the moon and onto Mars, we're going to do so safely and responsibly.
Yeah, and I'll add one of the other things that we love about the Accords, again, is it's not just the commonly known space powers that are engaged in it, but it really is the full gamut of space agencies. So we were briefing one country last fall, and they said, we don't even have an Air Force. Why would we need to sign on to a space agreement? And we then had a great opportunity to explain space touches every aspect of everybody's lives, just as you mentioned, Jennifer, in your opening remarks. So helping them understand the impacts on maritime, especially for Southeast Asia, right? Like the impacts on maritime and GPS and the internet and that sort of thing. It's also a bit of a eye-opening conversation for some of those countries that are newer to space. And then as we engage with them, the State Department's a great partner on what are some of those best practices, and NASA can help create on the programmatic side opportunities, and also share some of our programmatic best practices for them as they build out their space programs. But the Accords really is for countries of all sizes that are aligned with, just as Jonathan said, transparency and the peaceful exploration of space.
We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask the final question to you both. You talked about our International Space Station is retiring, and we are looking into this private space station model. What can you tell us more about how our allies can participate in that? I know you had talked about it briefly in your speeches, but anything that you want to add to that? Because I think that's a very exciting opportunity for us going forward.
Yeah, I'll talk briefly about that, and I definitely want to maybe just hit a couple more points on the Indo-Pacific, if you'll allow me, before we wrap up. But look, we've been, and I'll defer to our NASA colleagues, but we've been talking to Indo-Pacific partners about a lot of opportunities, not just the 4 commercial space station concepts I mentioned, but also things like private astronaut missions. And again, those operated by trips to the ISS in cooperation with NASA. And we are presenting these opportunities and many others as opportunities for, as Kathleen said, countries that maybe don't even have a space agency, don't have a space program, but to get involved through investment. I mean, not every country can do that or has the resources, but those that can, we are really looking for that investment directly into those concepts or into the American space markets. But if I could, let me just mention a bit about, specifically what we're seeing in Indo-Pacific. And it's actually really, we talk about these things to all of our partners there, but a lot of times what we hear back is a real hunger for Earth observation satellite data and things like that. So it's not necessarily, I want to start a lunar program. It's much more often, I want a better access to Earth observation satellite data. I want more training in how to use that data, whether it's for disaster response or maritime domain awareness or combating illegal fishing. So many applications of that kind of data. So we are working to meet that demand. So for example, we have a Surveyor Hub in Bangkok that our embassy oversees, and that actually provides training on the use of Earth observation satellite data through our implementing partner there throughout Southeast Asia. And we're also looking, in addition to answering that demand, we want to, ideally, and hopefully this is something we're going to be focusing on the next year or two, getting our commercial space companies that have some of the world's best Earth observation satellite data products or space situational awareness products or other products, getting them connected with the right decision makers in the region so we can boost sales and exports to the region and also investment back in the US. Some of that's also just showing up. So I think we mentioned, or you had mentioned earlier, the Asia-Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum. We want to keep showing up at that. It's Japan-led forum, very important. We want to bolster Japan's leadership of that forum. It has a very strong focus on space law and policy and regulation. And also ASEAN. I'll mention that as it's kind of a final note here. It is moving in now to the Philippines chair year of ASEAN. We want to support that across the board, of course, from the State Department, but also in particular, they're interested in raising the profile of space cooperation. We want to support that, and one of the ways we want to do that is meeting that demand in the region for things like Earth observation data, bringing our private sector into the picture as well, and continuing to engage with those partners.
Yeah, and maybe just to bring it back, Jennifer, to your question about the commercial space stations, NASA's Commercial LEO Destinations program. So, of course, the International Space Station will retire in 2030. We just celebrated 25 years of continuous human presence on the ISS. And of course, that's been with international partners the entire time. That's the first letter in ISS, it's international. So we're so proud of that program, and we're equally as excited for US industry to pick up the baton and start having commercial space stations. We have a huge chunk of US industry engaged on those missions, either from manufacturing or being the prime contractors for it. And I know that the administrator is very focused on what does the future of those CLDs look like in terms of requirements. And that's been part of our listening tours. We do this roadshow with industry to get feedback from them on where do they see the demand on CLDs and how can we enable them even more to have successful business cases. It's critical. We've also been very encouraged by the engagement from the international partners. So at first, they were coming to NASA and saying, who would you like us to work with? And we said, no, we will make some decisions, but also it's for you to go and engage with those companies directly. And really, that's an opportunity for the international partners. Go tell them what you need and what requirements you would like to have in your glove box or in your greenhouse setups and that sort of thing. So, and we've seen, especially just as Jonathan mentioned from Japan, great engagement with the CLD partners. I also know there's a Korean pharma company that's engaged as well. So it's an opportunity for manufacturing and for hardware collaboration between the US companies and international partners, but also just as Jonathan said, investment. And then maybe I'll just wrap up since you touched on the private astronaut missions. What a huge success that program's been. I mean, especially when you look at the Axiom 4 mission, the 3 international governments who flew on AX-4, Poland, Hungary, and India, for all 3 countries, they had not had an astronaut in space for over 40 years. And each of them flew with somebody else when they went last time, but now they've all come and flown with the US. And we've heard from companies that are interested in private astronaut missions that they have so much great demand from the international community and other countries that are interested in flying with them. So we're looking forward to the next set of PAMs coming up, and just really excited to get more of our partners in space with us.
Thank you. So much for being here today. I think we have a lot of things to be excited about as we think about Indo-Pacific space and with our partners and allies with our government agencies here in civil space. So thank you for being here again. And then we're going to take a little break where we transition to the next panel. The break won't be as long as we had envisioned, so it's going to be about 5 minutes, and then we'll invite the second panelist and the moderator to come and take the stage. So thank you all.
Okay, hello everybody. I think we're live. So this is the second session of today's event. This is your second panel, which I'm a happy member. It's great to be here participating with IAPS. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to everybody that's here in person in the room. Thank you to those watching online. It's great to have you here. My name is Sean Wilson. I'm a senior associate non-resident at CSIS, as well as a consultant and investment banker. Prior to that, I worked in the U.S. government for a number of years, including on the U.S. National Space Council. Today's panel is about allies in the Indo-Pacific, and we're fortunate to be joined today by two of the United States' strongest allies in the region. I had the great honor actually to be at the most recent U.S. ROK Japan Space Trilateral among our countries in 2023, and so it's nice to continue that conversation here with you today. All three of our nations, of course, face growing space and counter space threats from Russia, China, and the Russia, China, and the DPRK, not to mention the collaborations that are occurring amongst a number of those countries. Additionally, our respective space industries are facing threats of a different sort from increasingly sophisticated commercial offerings from entities based in the PRC. This is cause for concern given the range of predatory and non-market practices that we see from PRC entities in a number of other advanced technology sectors. However, while the threats are great, so are the opportunities for all of our nations to collaborate across civil, commercial, and national security space sectors. Indeed, I would offer that the speed and innovation in the commercial space sector is expanding the scope of potential cooperation. Pursued correctly, international commercial cooperation could allow for Japan and the ROK to leap ahead in potentially fielding advanced and interoperable warfighting capabilities, not to mention the civil programs that were touched on earlier. Of course, if we instead retreat to sourcing only capabilities that are fully indigenous, then our respective capabilities will not only be less advanced and lack interoperability, but in some cases we will end up fielding what in English we would call white elephants, that will keep the industrial policy bureaucrats happy, but which will not add much in terms of concrete hard power to our respective alliances. So that's enough out of me. You guys are you're here today to hear from our panelists, so we'll move over to them. To kick the session off, I'll have each panelist introduce themselves briefly, and then after that, we'll move into the Q&A period. So to kick things off, please, Colonel Yuka Nakazato, Air and Space Attaché, the Embassy in Japan. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting us today. It is my honor to come here to speak about the space with my strong ally and partner country. So first of all, I need to say I have candy in my mouth because I still have my sore throat, but I thought I cannot miss this important session. So it might be difficult to hear my saying, but it is maybe not only about my throat, or it is also about my English. But anyway, I try to speak slowly. And I came here June in 2023. So this is almost my attaché job will be finished. So I'm really happy to be here to speak about our activity before I'm going back to Japan. And I'm really excited to session with two of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. And I'm Colonel Lee, and I'm Air and Space Attaché from Korean Embassy. And it's been 1.5 years for me here, so I still have the same amount of time left. And actually, my background is I'm fighter pilot. I flew the F-35 and F-16. So I didn't have lots of the space experience, actually, but outside of the fighter pilot job, actually, I worked at the Korea Air Operations Center, where the air and space operation is ongoing. And over there, I had a chance to feel the operational use of the space over there, and I also had a chance to pick up a lot of space since I came here because there has been lots of demand. And so I'm really excited to the conversation today, and I'm really glad that I'm with my great friend Yuka here.
Yeah, great to have both of you. And one housekeeping note that I neglected to mention up top. For those people putting in questions through the portal, just make sure to do that through the link that you've been provided, and then it'll come to me on this tablet here. So hopefully that is easily done. And now we'll move on, speaking of questions, into some of our questions. So the first one, turn to you, Colonel Nakazato, to go first. Would welcome an opportunity to hear about your country's recent successes in space. Any highlights you'd like to mention, please, over to you.
So how excited that I can share our success to all of you. So today I would like to introduce three of it. The first one is hosted payload. The successful launch in quasi-satellite number 6, hosting the U.S. Space Defense Awareness Payload on February 2nd, 2025, is one of the most symbolic initiatives in U.S.-Japan cooperation in space domain. The quasi-satellite number 7, which is also equipped U.S. sensor, was scheduled for launch next month, but unfortunately, it has been postponed due to the recent launch failure of quasi-satellite number 5. I hope it will happen soon. The second is international cooperation. So since December 2023, the Japanese Ministry of Defense and the Japan Self-Defense Forces have been participating in Combined Space Operations (CSPO) initiatives, a multinational framework among like-minded countries discussing space security. At the CSPO initiative Principals Board held in France last December, the Chief of Staff of the Japan Air Self-Defense Force engaged in discussion with allies and partner countries regarding the stable use of outer space, and promoted defense cooperation and exchanges through meetings with the chiefs of staff of other participating countries. In addition to the CSPO initiative, Japan promotes space defense cooperation with various countries through participation in exercise, educational exchange, and other activities. The third is the rapid development of our defense capabilities in space domain. Regarding the organization, the Space Operation Unit, which began with approximately 20 personnel in 2020, is planned to become a group in 2022, a wing by March 2026, it will come soon, and a command of approximately 880 personnel by March 2027. It will led by 3-star general. Furthermore, the Air Self-Defense Force will change its name to the Air and Space Self-Defense Force. Still, this name is tentative. Regarding equipment, we have already equipped with space situation awareness system, satellite laser ranging, satellite jamming, detection equipment, and SSA radars. It is planned to launch SDA satellite by March 2027. So, regarding the current situation, current national space security situation, Japan, we understand we need to develop our space capability rapidly. That's all from me.
Great, thank you. All right, Colonel Lee, your chance to brag on recent achievements in the ROK.
Yeah, firstly, I want to say that the opinion and view what I'm saying today actually doesn't represent my government or military, and it's totally my own view. And so I would firstly pick the fourth launch of the Nuri rockets, also known as the Korea Space Launch Vehicle 2, and which carried the main satellite and the 12 the cube satellite into orbit. And it was last November, and it was significant in two aspects. Firstly, and it was entirely achieved through our sovereign technology, both the satellite space launch vehicle and the satellite. So it proved and solidified the status of spacefaring nations with the sovereign satellite launch capability. And secondly, it also exemplified that we are on course for the moving into the new space era, where the civil industries the leading the effort of space development and the innovation. This time, the Hanwha Aerospace, our civilian company, actually, they oversaw the manufacturing and the assembly of the satellite as a system integrator, and also they participate in the launch operation as well. And the main satellite was also commercially actually manufactured by our KAI, Korea Aerospace Industry, using our domestically developed design and the standard. And the next the newly launches actually will be totally led by Hanwha Aerospace from the space launch vehicle manufacturing and to the launch operation as well. So in line with that, my second pick will be the startup company, the InnoSpace, the first launch of their independently developed space launch vehicle. Actually, it was our first commercial launch, and it was our company's first attempt to get into the global launch market, space launch market. And actually, unfortunately, it was failed to reach orbit, but still it proved that we are going into the right direction. Because the actual expert has said that in order to moving into the new space era, we need to move from the high cost and low risk program led by government to higher risk and low cost program led by the small and the medium companies. And what InnoSpace did was actually exactly that. So kudos to InnoSpace, and I hope their second launch planned this year will succeed and usher our industry into actually new territory. And the last but not least, and I want to mention that the completion of launching all 5 of the 4 to 5 program, the ISR military satellite. Actually, it is composed of 1 EOIR and 4 SAR, and that enable us actually to monitor the North Korea military activities in every 2 hours. So far, we have relied on the US satellite and the civil Earth observation multi-purpose satellite for satellite imagery, but now for the first time, we have a dedicated the military ISR satellite. This is very crucial at this time because now we are working on the wartime operation control transfer for the peninsula from the US to ROC, and the enhancing the military ISR capability is the one aspect that we want to have before the transfer. So I think we are now one step close to that goal.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of Hanwha, I think they're up next in the coming panel, so stay tuned. Next question, back to you, Colonel Nakazato, to start us off with. How does your country view the evolving space security environment in the Indo-Pacific, and how do you assess its impacts for defense? Which types of threats to space systems, whether reversible, non-reversible, kinetic, cyber, interference, other things, most concern your military planners today, and why? Additionally, What is your country's approach to resilience? And what existing mechanisms between your country and the United States best support this objective?
First, regarding the space security environment in the Pacific, some countries are stepping up the development of technology, such as contributing to killer satellites, verification tests of rendezvous and proximity operations, RPO, and development and testing of direct ascent anti-satellite DASAT missiles to interfere with and neutralize the satellites of other countries and to secure their own military superiority. This leads to the development of space as a warfighting domain and increases threats and risks in outer space. Since space plays a central role in command and control and intelligence gathering for current joint military operations, these threats will have a significant impact on the operational capabilities of Japan's self-defense force. In particular, the loss of some functions in space systems related to communications, position navigation and training, PNT, and remote sensing could have a significant impact on the military operations. Therefore, I think reversible, kinetic, and cyber interference are all concerning threats against our space system. As an approach to resilience, Japan has a framework called the Public-Private Council on Enhancing the Stability of Space System, which was established in 2023 to ensure the safe and stable use of outer space. Tabletop exercises are conducted every year so that the government can accurately grasp and analyze the situation and approximately respond with the public and private sector in the event of unforeseen space-related incident. From the perspective of strengthening the resilience of our space system, we are considering strengthening cybersecurity measures for the entire space system connecting satellites and the ground system, strengthening the resilience of space-related facility on the ground, decentralizing the installation of facilities on the ground, and introducing anti-jamming technology to deal with interference with PNT signals. And I would like to talk about cooperation with allies and like-minded countries. Between Japan and the United States, various consultation frameworks exist from government level to military level, such as Comprehensive Space Dialogue and Space Working Group. Japan, I follow the question, right? Japan is also participating in a CISPO initiative, as I mentioned. And in addition, Japan is coordinating with United States to join Protected Anti-Jam Tactical SATCOM, PATS, a US-led framework for sharing satellites communication spectrum in order to ensure highly resilient communication. So there are many projects is going on.
Thank you. And I think that's such a good point about information security, which is, I think, absolutely foundational, including cybersecurity to all allied operations in space. So thanks for raising that. Colonel Lee, over to you.
So I think Indo-Pacific is where the theater where the biggest military powers are located. And I think that's not different in the space domain. So I found out that almost the 85% of the around the 600 something the military satellites are from the Indo-Pacific countries. Also the nations that have conducted the anti-satellite missile test, and the nations that have demonstrated the capability for the orbital maneuver that amounts to the dogfight in space, they are also in the Indo-Pacific. So I think it's fair to say that Indo-Pacific is kind of the leading the uh, global space race, also as well as the militarization of the space, making space more congested and contested. Actually, the militarization of the space is very challenging to our ROC U.S. Joint Force because we are much more reliant on the space capability, much more than our adversary, the North Korea. So all the space-based capability like C5I SRT and navigation and precision guided munition and that kind of thing, actually, that's our asymmetric advantage over North Korea, which operate mostly the out-of-date systems. So it is very imperative to the joint force actually to maintain that advantage by neutralizing the enemy's counter space threats, as well as actively protecting the orbital and terrestrial the space assets, actually on the outside of the world. And so also the militarization of the space, as well as the acknowledging the space as a warfighting and or the operational domain means that now we need to think about how we enable the all 6 joint functions that we do in other domain. C2, the command and control, and intel, fires, and the maneuver and movement, and protection sustainment. And that's actually we haven't thought about before. So actually, that's the change to our joint force, and actually regarding the most imminent threat we think about is actually the cyber and the electronic warfares, such as the GPS jamming, because that's what the DPRK is known to have, and that's what we actually is experiencing even during the peacetime. But those are not the threat that we only expect, because we don't know whether the other type of counter space technology have been transferred to North Korea in exchange for their support in Ukraine war. Also, we have to think about the third-party intervention during the conflict. So maybe space might be the first domain our potential adversary may intervene without risking the territorial integrity. So we also need to be ready for all types of the counter threat capability, not just the cyber and the EW. And finally, how we enhance the resilience. And I think we are, I would say, enhancing the partnership with the allies and partners, as well as the building the robust assets, including dual use capability as well, to have proliferated and the redundant capability. I think those two are the main approach. Especially enhancing the allied relationship with the U.S. Is the foremost important to us because the U.S. is the one who has the most robust the space assets. So in 2024, actually, we updated our mutual defense treaty. So we acknowledge that the mutual treaty is extended to cover the space and cyber as well. So attacking cyber and space can actually trigger the Article 3 of our treaty and trigger the response of the ROC U.S. Joint Forces. Also, we also joined the U.S. Space Forces, the Joint Commercial Operation last year, which leverages the commercial capabilities for the warfighting need. So currently, it focuses on space domain awareness, in which we actually have a capability gap, and also we are expected it to expand to the Earth observation as well as the SECOM, SECOM and the PNT jamming situational awareness as well, and those capabilities are very critical to the joint force.
Yeah, thank you. You rose so many good points that I want to jump on, which I'll restrain myself from doing so that we can move on to the next question. But particularly your point on the dependencies and asymmetries of the U.S. and its allies and partners on space, including U.S. forces coming to reinforce the ROK or Japan in a crisis or conflict, I think is well noted, as well as the peacetime use of GPS jamming by adversaries. So thank you for raising that. Next question up. Back to you, Colonel Nakazato, actually. Which opportunities and challenges do you see in the Indo-Pacific and working with allies and partners to secure the space domain and promote resiliency?
So this is my own opinion. I do not represent my government, but the existence of nations that recognize the importance of space domain and security. And sorry, let me say from the beginning. The existence of nations that recognize the importance of space domains and security, and that are seeking to maintain and enhance their space capabilities, present a significant opportunity for space security in the Indo-Pacific region. For example, South Korea and Japan, who are participating as a panelist here today. Other included Australia, India, and New Zealand. Furthermore, although the extent varies, Japan has already engaged in dialogue and discussion on space security cooperation with these countries, both bilaterally and multilaterally, including the United States from the strategic level down to the tactical level. I think this is a significant advantage for the Indo-Pacific space security. On the other hand, from the perspective of ensuring security in the space domain, I believe the challenges lies in getting countries to recognize the importance and urgency of space security, regardless of whether they possess space capabilities. Of course, this is not limited to the Indo-Pacific region. The reason why I think the way is to promote the creation of international norms and rules is in space in order to ensure the safe and stable use of space. As space systems become increasingly important for our vital for security, economic, and social activities, it is imperative to address the growing threats and risks in space, such as counter-space capabilities and space debris. However, the existing international agreements do not have any direct provisions on prohibiting the destruction of objects in space or on refraining from actions that cause or trigger space debris. Active discussion with like-minded countries is important to shape norms for responsible behavior in space. Given the accelerating pace of threat in the current space domain, I feel a strong sense of urgency that we must move more swiftly to build alliance and prevent a situation where might makes right.
Yeah, so my opinion is that opportunity is that we already have lots of good friends in the Pacific, actually who share the same alliance and partners, as well as have a good space program and the same similar understanding on geopolitics and the threat environment. And so actually some countries already fought alongside us during the Korean War, like Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines and the Thailand. So we can, count on them to support our space activity if there is the conflict or escalation. But at the same time, the challenge is that I feel that without the U.S. leadership in the region, actually the bilateral or multilateral the collaboration among countries is not as robust as actually we hope to be. For example, the Air Force actually signed several the MOUs with the several countries to have the high level space engagement talk since 2022. But I found out that it has been very stagnant. Also, we don't have the space agencies like ESA in Europe and AFSA in Africa, or the Caribbean and the Latin America space agencies. We have as you mentioned, that we have a Asia Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum, but that's not a permanent body, and that's primarily the forum of like a non-defense or security related matters, and it doesn't have the dedicated budget. So in comparison, the ESA actually the last year they widened their mandate to include the security and defense, and actually they allocated the budget actually to that mission. Also, the NATO in Brussels summit in 2021, they acknowledged that their collective defense also expanded to the space. So in the Indo-Pacific, without that kind of the regional body to promote the space security, actually we currently have to rely on the U.S. leadership and to provide it for the time being.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Starting again with Colonel Nakazato, what new policies or initiatives, such as strategic guidelines, organizational reforms, or new acquisition approaches, do you believe can help you meet those objectives?
So in July 2025, the Ministry of Defense published the Space Domain Defense Guidelines. While the Japanese government has previously announced initiative and plans regarding the space policies, but this guideline is the first time the Ministry of Defense has made such an announcement. And I believe this represents a significant step forward for our national space security. And these space domain defense guidelines define 4 directions for strengthening defense capability in space domain in Japan. First is rapid and accurate battle space awareness, as well as early detection of indication of situation by real-time detection tracking of target from outer space. Second is ensuring SATCOM as operational foundation by improving communications capabilities and resiliency. Third is mission assurance by building capabilities for early detection of threats, identification of their intent capabilities, and satellite protection, etc. Fourth is further reinforcing capability to disrupt C4I and other capabilities of opponents amid expanding threats and risk in outer space. Based on these guidelines, the self-defense forces are advancing initiatives such as developing next-generation defense communication satellite and space domain awareness satellites, upgrading the space operation group to a wing and then a command, and strengthening the framework to transform air self-defense force to air and space self-defense force, as I mentioned. In addition, Prime Minister Takaichi, who took office in October 2025, has instructed the initiation of deliberation aimed at revising the 3 strategic documents, that is, National Security Strategy, National Defense Strategy and Defense Capability Development Plan within this year. The last year, as you know, U.S. National Security Strategy was announced. Japan will revise same. So I think this new strategy is ahead to is thinking about the next 5 years to 10 years. So this new strategy is expected to further advance the enhancement of Japan's space capabilities.
Thank you. Colonel Lee, over to you.
Firstly, I think we need a more stronger national level governance of the space. Actually, we have the National Space Council, and the chairmanship of the council was elevated from the prime minister to the president in 2024. Also, we established the KASA, the Korea Aerospace Administration, the dedicated space, the agency in Korea, was also established in 2024. So actually, we showed the political will to governing the space. But I think that National Space Committee is not governing body, or rather, it's more of like an approval body of what the KASA is planning. And also, KASA is under the Ministry of the Science and ICT. So the KASA doesn't have the power and authority actually to coordinate among the various ministries with the different mandate and goals. So I think we need to have some position and offices in the presidential office, national security office, that have sufficient the power and authority to coordinate among the various stakeholders, and also leading the National Security Council. And I think that office also need to prepare the national level, the space security strategy. We have a national space policy in the form of the basic, the space development promotion plan, developed by KASA every 5 years by law. But it is mostly focused on technology development and industrial development and the space exploration, and not much about the defense and security. It only identifies the space security as one of the 5 mission area. And even in the space security mission area, it's heavily focused on the space hazard, like a collision of the satellite or the falling of the space object. So more of a response to the disaster type. It's actually different from the space threat, which has actor and clear intent and purpose. So I think having the national level space security strategy that actually can balance between the various security related matters like defense and technology, economy, and diplomatic matters, and it could prepare us better for the current and future security environment. Finally, also we need to have a leading the military services or the command for the military space activities. Currently, we don't have a leading space. We don't have any service or command that has a statutory authority actually to leading that effort from force design and force development and force employment. So actually, it generates inefficiency and confusion and sometimes conflict. But actually, our Air Force is de facto the leading services with the policy making capability as well as the actually the space operation capability with the actual space assets. And our Air Force established the Space Operation Group in 2024 and plan to upgrade that to the Space Operation Wing by 2027 and to Space Operation Command by 2030. So I think we can designate by law for Air Force to lead the space activities. But there could be other options, just like our current administration proposed. We can have the Space Command, like a Space Strategy Command, as proposed by our current administration. Either way, I think that kind of leading body is required to have a more integrated the space activities.
Yeah, thank you. I think your point on the need for a central coordinating body that can weigh the different equities and ensure that things like industrial policy are being balanced against sort of other national objectives is really well received and a really important one. Thank you. Next question, back to you, Colonel Nakazato. In terms of your industry, how is your national space industry in Japan shaping your approach to allied space cooperation and mission priorities? And what would best align your industrial base with allies or partners for joint space capabilities?
I think it is important to utilize Japan's strengths when cooperating with allies and partners in space. For example, as Kathleen said in a previous session, Japan has made significant contributions in the Artemis program, such as the development of supply technology for the Lunar Orbiting Gateway Station and the manned pressurized lunar rover, which utilize civil or commercial technologies. In the field of security, the Space Security Initiative, formulated in June 2023, lists realization of virtuous or positive cycle of security and fostering space industrial base as one of 3 key approaches to achieving space security goals. The Ministry of Defense plays a central role in research studies from the standpoint of strategic and operational needs. In addition, the Ministry of Defense is facilitating efforts toward the agile acquisition of space system by proactively seeking proposals from the private sector and leveraging their technologies. I believe that US-led Joint Commercial Operations, JCO, is one effective way to efficiently connect our industrial base with allies for joint space capabilities. Japan is already participating in JCO activities, but I think continued consideration and efforts are needed to further utilize our commercial capabilities. Yes.
Colonel Lee, over to you.
Yeah, our government has a goal of becoming the space global economy powerhouse by 2045 and increase the market share of the space from current 1% to 10% in the same time frame. And so our government is actually striving to establish the commercial space ecosystems. So we plan to establish the space industry clusters in 3 different geographic areas for a space launch vehicle and satellite and R&D and space workforce development as well. And our government is also is planning to establish the launch site dedicated only to the commercial launch. Also, as I said, the next newly rocket launches, as well as the development of the next Korea space launch vehicle, which will be actually the reusable one, actually will be led by the commercial industries. But I think still we have a room for improvement. First one is that maybe we need to have a policy to support the new startups, such as providing the venture capitals. Also, I think we need to clearly send the demand signals to industries. Actually, the survey found out that the biggest obstacle for us moving into the new space era is the lack of a demand. But I think the demand isn't a problem, but our government, especially our defense sector, has a tendency to be very reluctant to talking to industries about our requirement, as if it leads to either corruption or conflict of interest. But I think that kind of the taboo should be broken, and we need to clearly communicate to the industry about our capability requirements and associated acquisition plan and timeline, so that they can understand our demand and make an investment based on that.
Hey, thank you. So many good points, including the role of chaebol versus startups and how financing works in Korea. And then also, I think for all of our governments, the issue of the government customer and sort of laying out expectations to industry over the long term, I think is really well taken. Thank you. Next question, related topic. Back to you, Colonel Nakazato. How do you view the relationships among the financial sector, the aerospace sector, and governments in delivering innovative space capabilities?
So first of all, I would like to speak about the JAXA Space Fund. So Japanese cabinet approved a bill to establish a $6.7 billion, the 1 trillion yen, 10 years fund for the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA. So this fund aims to accelerate and strengthen the achievement of the three goals. First is expanding the space market. Second is solving global and social issues. And third is pioneering frontier. JAXA, I am not a representative from JAXA. However, Japan Ministry of Defense and JAXA has a strong relationship. And JAXA is one of the leading agency to develop our Japan space capabilities. So I think this fund is really helpful, not only JAXA, but also our national security, national space security. And I would like to touch upon our security side. The government of Japan approved $58 billion, 9.04 trillion yen defense spending for fiscal year 2026. This is a record defense budget plan. Main initiatives related to space domain by Air Self-Defense Force in this budget is establishment of Space Operation Command, launch of Space Defense Awareness Satellite, and enhanced space domain awareness capabilities enables full-scale operation of capabilities to disrupt C4I. So this, as I mentioned, this defense budget are record. Of course, it is not only for space, but also all defense capabilities. But given the current situation, I think this budget enable us to develop or strengthen our capability rapidly.
Thank you. Colonel Lee, over to you.
So what was the exact question again?
Oh, just to recap, how do you view the relationship among financial sector, aerospace sector, the government in terms of promoting innovative space capabilities for Korea on the security side?
Yeah, actually, I mentioned about the problem of the current status, and actually, I think that could answer it.
Yeah, you actually previewed the question, which I appreciate. That brings us to our last prepared question. This one's very quick and rapid fire. If you could, starting with you, Colonel Nakazato, please pick one specific way that you would like for your government to cooperate with Korea in space moving forward.
I'm really happy because I would like to go and say is same as Zelox, which he said as you mentioned before. So I believe we should advance cooperation with the United States regarding space operation capabilities. It is important to actively engage in discussion and promote concrete actives by involving the United States, which is leading the way, and utilize existing multilateral framework. And beyond dialogue, various options exist, such as troop exchange and conducting joint training and exercise. And I mentioned the United States is important our ally, so cooperation with the United States is very important for Japan space security. But at the same time, now we are in the same on panel with South Korea partners. So this trilateral cooperation is also important, I believe.
Thank you. And same question back to you, Colonel Lee. Any specific ways, either bilateral with Japan or trilateral with the US or with other countries in the region?
Actually, Japan, for Japan, actually, we have a natural condition to collaborate with the geographical proximity and the same US allies, as well as the similar industrial base. But sometimes for the military matters, the collaboration got tricky because of the history. But I think the space could give a very unique opportunity because non-sovereign nature of the space domain, like so someone's presence in the domain actually doesn't infringe the other sovereignty. So I think the space could be a very good avenue to actually actively start the bilateral military exercise. And also we are sharing the same threat, North Korea threat. So we already have some information sharing mechanism for the missile warning. So ROC US trilateral information sharing agreement. So we can expand that to include we now have our 4 to 5 ISS satellite, and Japan has information gathering satellite. So we can either share the information, or even we can enable the data integration among them. Also, we both have a gap in the space domain awareness. So we are also building our assets for that, and Japan has one. So also we can share that data to fill each other's gap.
One more thing. Let me add one more thing. Unfortunately, today, Chris, who is an Australian space attaché, cannot join us. But I think Delox agree with me. Australia also important entity in the Indo-Pacific theater, and also New Zealand. New Zealand is also one of the important space country in the Indo-Pacific theater. So these 4 attaché, we actively talking about space. So this is a great relationship to enhance our cooperation in terms of space in the international in the Indo-Pacific theater, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
I love it. Crossflow with our panelists. I'm looking at our organizers in the back. Do we have any more time for more questions, or are we out? 5 minutes. Okay. For those submitting your questions online, please put your affiliation with your name. For those in the room, introduce yourself if called upon. So this is probably our one and done question. So anybody? Yes, sorry. We got time for 2? Okay. Please, first.
James Vanderbilt from U.S. National Defense University. China and Russia.
So it's a little bit difficult to understand what your point of the question. Could you repeat it again? Very much. It is really timely question. Yes, the compared with other country, Japan, we do not. We are really we do not have s- gener- so so to no, we do not have a space law, espionage spy law. However, uh, thinking about current situation, our government, especially the new administration, start to think cyber or espionage or spy is really important to strengthen our national security. So the currently, I soon or already they already start to talk about espionage, how to counter espionage. I forgot the correct English name, but regarding this effort, Japanese government started think about creating organization related intelligence. So because it is important to integrate intelligence as a whole government. I believe this effort will be lead to espionage or counter espionage or actively correcting information information, right. And one more thing I would like to add is last year we already passed the law of active cyber defense. It is also important, or it is also a big step for national security. So these kind of, I believe, our government effort is going to go appropriate way.
And apologies for those watching remotely, that you might not have heard the question, but it was about essentially espionage authorities in Japan and how that relates to the space domain. One more question? Awada-san, please.
I'm Keisuke Wada, recent graduate of Houston. Well, the first panelists, have touched upon this, or like, oh, yeah. Both of the panelists have touched upon this already in the end, but I want to hear more about the trilateral effort for the space exactly. Like, which, sphere or domain has the biggest progress between, among the trilateral efforts? Which sphere or domain has room for more effort? Things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take first. And I think, we have, as I said, we share the same threat, especially the North Korea. DPRK is developing the nuclear and missile very fast. So actually, we already have a kind of the mechanism, and based on that, we can develop further. We are now working with the U.S. To actually share the shared early warning the system there, and maybe we can also extend that to the Japan as well. So space domain awareness or early warning, so space kind of based intelligence, comprising PNT and intelligence, the Earth observation, and actually that's very safe to cooperate. But I think regarding the space control assets, like a counter space assets, like laser dazzling or EW, and they're kind of doing the offensive capability. I don't think that will be very hard to collaborate with Japan currently.
As Zelox mentioned, we already have some mechanism, trilateral mechanism in the government level, and it's really helpful for us to accelerate our coordination, our cooperation. And first, we need to enhance our dialogue in terms of space, because if you say space, it's really huge. So first, we need to understand how can we cooperate, or where can we cooperate in the space field. We need to figure out. I think that is a first step. And next one is the training and exercise. So when we conduct space operation, we need to understand how to operate, or how can we keep our interoperability. So that is also important things. In the end, I think the information sharing is also important. Though, as Zelax mentioned, one of our common threat is North Korea, and geographically we are really close. So we respond quickly as much as we can. So one of the important things is information sharing. So we need to, this is not only, it is also, we can say the same thing in the space field. So these three is important effort, even in the space, I believe.
And
We don't have time, right?
well, I was going to close this up, and I'll just take moderator's privilege and say, having had the privilege of being at the last trilateral dialogue in Seoul in 2023, I agree with everything that was just said, which is the consensus at that time was that the security focus is where we had at least common denominator among the governments. There's also interest in things like sharing national policies and responsible behavior. Obviously, we have new governments in all three nations. It's up to them, I think, to decide if they want that format to continue and what those priorities look like. But I would not be surprised if security continues to be the main priority. But with that, I'm getting motion that we're over time, so we have to stop talking now. Thank you, everybody, for joining virtually. Appreciate the people in the room, and tune in next time. See you.
All right, let's get started. Thank you. Now we're entering into panel 3. We are going strong here, as well as our audience joining online. So thank you for staying with us as part of this important discussion. So I have our third panelist joining. Oh, he was on. Joining us from Korea, from Hanwha. So I will go ahead and introduce him. Oh, there he is. Hello. It is very early. I believe it's 6 a.m. And he's actually been tuning into the session from the beginning. So he has been joining us mornings. That's Sung-hwan Choi, Specialty Fellow at the Hanwha Space Business Department. Before joining Hanwha, he served 34 years in the ROK Air Force. He was designated as a F4E Weapons Systems Officer and have over 1,400 flight hours. He worked at the Force Planning Department of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and was in charge of Military Reconnaissance Satellite Project. He was also the Chief of Space Power Development Division at the Space Center at the Air Force Headquarters. And the list continues. He was also the director of ROCAF Space Center and participated in Global Sentinel. Sir, thank you so much for joining us early morning, your time. I'm going to just go to my right, Troy. Thank you for joining Brashear. He's the Vice President of International Growth and Business Development with Northrop Grumman. He spearheads the sector's international business development and growth strategy and forges strategic partnerships with governments, military organization, industry leaders, suppliers, academia to expand global opportunities. He served in multiple roles. He was the Vice President of Satellite Missions, Combat Sensors Business Unit, where he oversaw production, development, and he, before joining Northrop, he was also retired as a colonel in U.S. Air Force, where he was instrumental in establishing and leading Air Force Space Command's Advanced Systems and Development Directorate. Last but not least, Hide Kamiya. He is the Executive Vice President of Programs and Business Development with iSpace. He joined iSpace in 2025, coming from Mitsubishi Corporation, where he also promoted space and national security business and global scale, on the global scale, and restructured and rebuilt space business. He also served in various roles at the Japan Space Imaging, a Japanese company, and Starlab Space, a US-based company. Okay, you have heard from our other panels and panelists how important commercial industry is to the space domain. And so I feel like we had the two startup panels to set a space for you to talk about all the amazing things that the industry is doing. So I'm actually going to turn it over to you, Colonel Choi. I'm looking sideways. I won't do that anymore. Why don't you go ahead? My first question to our panelists is, over the past 2 years, what major changes have you observed in your country and the broader Indo-Pacific region's commercial space ecosystems?
How are you? Good morning from Korea. I did it around 6 a.m. today. Thank you for introduction. As I mentioned, I spent 30 years in the Air Force before joining HANA Systems. Transitioning from a military commander to a specialist in the commercial sector gave me a profound realization. The speed of innovation in the commercial sector is redefining national defense. Today, I want to share how South Korea is embracing this shift and my suggestion for our Indo-Pacific cooperation. The most significant change in Korea has been the definitely shift from government-led old space to commercial new space. Just 2 months ago, in November 2025, the first launch of Nuri Ho was a success. This was a historic milestone because it was the first time a private system integrator, HANA Aerospace, managed the entire production process. Currently, Korea is shifting from government-led to private-led space in development. And the establishment of CASA, a Korean version of NASA, has been a game changer. It is now acting as a control tower, actively cutting red tape and supporting private companies. Although our market share is still growing, we are rapidly scaling independent capability from launch vehicle to surveillance satellite. Companies like HANA Systems are at the forefront, building a full value chain from observation satellites, like a small SAR satellite launched last December, to satellite communication services. In short, Korea has successfully entered the global stage as a top 7 launch power, and it is rapidly commercializing capabilities in small satellite and SAR technology. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Hide, let me go to you. What's your response? How is Japan doing?
Thank you. I think Japanese commercial space ecosystem has shifted from so-called one-time exploration operation to infrastructure building. For instance, there are 3 drivers. The first one is policy and funding. Mechanism has scaled up. As we all know, Japan created a so-called 10-year space strategic fund at the JAXA mainly, and to support a satellite constellation building, private launch, and to use dual-use tech. This is a big shift. Second is space is now for national security is becoming real. As Colonel Nakazato mentioned that Japanese missile defense is trying to invest on the LEO imaging satellite constellation with over $2 billion through private public initiatives. The third is launch options are increasing. For instance, Japan has Tanegashima and Uchinogura launching site for government launch. On top of that, Japanese startup company are now trying to launch a new site. For instance, Spaceport Key and Hokkaido Spaceport are now on active. The goal is to launch around 30 launchers per year in the early 2030s. That's a target driven by the Japanese government. And for industry like iSpace, so iSpace is working on moon, and we see that the NASA is now trying to bring a nuclear reactor, 100 kilowatt nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030. This creates a big change. Now, again, moon is not just for exploration, but the moon is now the space to utilize, make a business. That I think those kind of a big change for Japan at this moment.
I kind of want to start out with a quick story because I saw one of my classmates here, Trey Meeks, and so we were at the Air Force Academy together to what was probably ancient history for a lot of you. So back in the late 80s and early 90s, and I just got fascinated with space. We had to take a ton of engineering classes, and I took astronautical engineering and fell in love with Hohmann transfers and delta V and just all and all of that. And so my whole goal was I want to go do space. And think about when this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's post the shuttle accidents. And this was not exactly the high point for space for the United States. When you reflect back to where we were in the 50s and the 60s, but that was my passion, and that's what I wanted to go do. And it was my first choice to go to Los Angeles and work in space technology. And I got my assignment, and I was so excited. And then I found out afterward I was the only person who volunteered to go do that. So of course I got my first choice because it just was not the thing to go do. And I'm going to flash forward several decades later, right before 9/11, and I'm in theater operating out of Turkey. Saddam Hussein was still alive, and we're flying operations over Iraq. And I'm there as the one space person in theater, one in the entire theater to do space. And so much so that people still know me as the space guy. They don't remember my name. They just remember it's the short guy who was in theater, and he was the space guy. Because that is as much focus as we had at the time on getting that kind of capability. But here we are today, and that's why I was so excited. You know, Colonel Nakazato, we're really going to miss you here in the Washington region. So thank you for the last 3 years. And Colonel Lee, it's been fantastic. And so just think about that. We have not just air attaches, but official air and space attaches here focused on this. So it is so extremely important. So I know the question was what's changed over the last 2 years. I just want to reflect on what's changed over the last 30 years and how now to bring it back to the last 2 years, just how rapidly the space environment is changing. And from a commercial perspective, really proud to be part of Northrop Grumman's space team focused on business development around the world. But what I find more exciting is not about trying to sell Northrop capability in Japan or Korea or Taiwan or Australia, New Zealand. It's about the recognition that every country wants to have their own sovereign space capability. They want to design and develop and build space systems in their country and develop those kind of capabilities. And we're super glad to be a part of that and to partner with folks. So I think what's changed the most over the last 2 years is sort of the passion that we're seeing from nations and countries and the sheer number of new entrants, right? The number of, and Colonel Lee, you mentioned it, right? The small companies, the medium companies that are up and coming with new technology and capability. It is fantastic. If you're a space nerd like I am, you love it. You love to see all of that. And from a business perspective, also welcome the competition, right? Competition is good. It makes us all better. It raises all the boats, as the saying goes. So very excited again to just be part of this. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for focusing on space. We really appreciate it.
Well, there's going to be more to come, so stay tuned with double IPS here. I have to say, I before going through all the questions that we had discussed, you talked about competition is good. And I love hearing that because oftentimes when I hear about things like technology and space capabilities or anything in the defense world or even technology, you name it, competition is not always welcomed. Would love to hear some of the ways in which U.S. companies have been working, and it could be Northrop Grumman specific, with other countries in very constructive and real, tangible way.
Well, look, we are actively working with several companies in Japan on space domain awareness and missile warning and other kind of capabilities. We're actively working in Korea on a couple of MILSATCOM related efforts that we'd love to get involved in. But I do want to take one moment and talk about what we did over the last several years with Norway. And if you follow, there's a company called Space Norway, And just over 13 months ago, we launched 2 satellites. It's called the Arctic Satellite Broadband Mission. And what we did is I'm going to use hands here. So this is space nerd in action. This is not fighter pilot stuff currently, but it's space stuff. So, but yeah, you have the globe, and we have these satellites that hover over the North Pole to provide communications to the Arctic. Thank you. So look, so here's the Earth, and geo satellites are here. With these satellites, they rise and they hover over the North to provide communications to the Arctic. And Greenland's been in the news if you haven't read the news here recently. But the Arctic is a comms deprived area. So we spent several years working with Norway to build these 2 satellites. And it was just fantastic partnership. And what's really cool about it is that it's international and it's commercial and it's government all together. So it was Northrop Grumman as a company building a satellite for Space Norway, which is a company. But we ended up doing is putting a United States Space Force classified communications payload on that satellite. And so while Norway has communications over the Arctic, they have commercial communications, military communications. The U.S. has a payload on that satellite that provides military communications for the U.S. So that combination of commercial, international, military, all together in one package is, I think, the way that we need to go, and is, I think, a forecast of where we're going, because one, it reduces the cost for the nation, right? Space Norway was able to capitalize that program because the U.S. Space Force invested money into the payload and into part of the satellite. So from a company perspective, it helps close a business case, right? It helps you get your satellite in orbit sooner. From a United States perspective, right, or a host nation perspective, it allows you to get your payload into orbit much cheaper, right? You're not buying the entire satellite. You're not buying the entire rocket. You're partnering and you're putting that capability up together. So really exciting what we did. Those 2 satellites have been operational for over a year and they're operating fantastically. So I think this sort of international, commercial, military all together is the way we need to go. And then one last point, I'm looking at my military friends again. It makes an enemy's calculus a little bit harder to decide if they want to attack a satellite, right? Because now you're not just attacking a Japanese military satellite or a commercial satellite from Korea. You're now potentially attacking a Norwegian commercial, military, and U.S. satellite all at one time. And you know, whether that will influence the enemy or not, it just does make that decision a little harder.
Thank you. What do you assess as the biggest gap between progress that the commercial industry has made to date, and then there's a national ambition, and then the commercial reality? I'm going to go to you, Hide-san, and then I'll go to Colonel Choi.
Thank you. I think the biggest gap is that the government need, market, and commercial investment interests. For instance, as I mentioned, that the Japanese government will have a government lead LEO satellite constellation and private government launchers. However, the key is how to invite more and more investment from private entities. And there are a couple of challenges for space. Space, people believe that it is still TRL level is not so high, and there is a business risk. And but we definitely need more and more industry involvement. And thinking about the economy, supply chain is key. So to get or to establish a supply chain for space, especially for satellite and launch, we definitely need private, predictable project, predictable rules, and business-friendly regulations. I think those are the kind of gap I am seeing at this moment.
Over to you.
Yes. I see a clear market share gap. While Korea's space industry has grown to about 3.65 trillion won, we still represent only about 1% of the global market. Our national ambition is to be a global leader, but our current market dominance hadn't caught up yet. I'd like to say the biggest challenge between commercial reality is the barrier of deaths in technology transition. We have excellent government developed technologies like the Nuriho rocket. However, transferring this technology to the private sector and turning it into a profitable business model takes time and infrastructure. Bridging this gap, moving from technology acquisition to a commercial sustainability is our most urgent task, I think.
All good comments. And I think another area where if I put a pure business lens on here is, I think, and Colonel, I'm going to point you again, actually, you said it earlier, is more dialogue is needed, especially in the early phase of requirements. And what I've seen sometimes is that sometimes there's a tendency to skip the hard sort of mission and need assessment and jump straight to the technology, right? Because we all love the technology, right? It's so cool. And we want to jump to LEO and we want to jump to space domain instead of focusing on what is from a military perspective, what is the mission need? What is the end effect you need? From a commercial perspective, right? What is the business case? What is your rate of return? And so I think having more dialogue will help. I think having really solid long-term buying plans, because from a commercial perspective, right, very excited to partner in a country or with an in-country partner to build a satellite, and that's awesome. But you really, from a commercial perspective, need to have what's the order after that? Is there ever going to be a second satellite? Is there going to be a third? Because that will drive investment. That will drive dollars and R&D investment, research and development investment, and capital expenditures. So I think it's understanding the long-term plan and vision, having more dialogue, and focusing on the mission needs is where I would start.
Earlier today in an earlier panel, we talked about a government that is hesitant to engage in a dialogue because of concerns for corruption. I think that is definitely a concern, and I think it's an astute effort by the government to do that, but then it also creates issues and concerns from the industry side. What do you think is the biggest factors, one of the biggest factors that's preventing the Japanese government or the US government from having more robust dialogue? And Colonel Choi, I also will invite you to add to that thoughts if you had additional thoughts. Maybe we don't want to be critical of our government. Anybody, yeah, so Hide or Colonel Choi or Troy, if you have anything to add to that, what are some of the reasons why governments are hesitant in your country to have more dialogues to be a better partner to the commercial industry?
Nice. I think now the Korea is a turning point to commercializations. Before 2 years ago, and people compared to this time, it was a big progress in the cooperation between the government and the private sector. I think it will be more effort to develop between cooperation-based industry, I think.
I think for Japanese government, Colonel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Japanese government trying to be fair to everyone for Japanese companies. So if Japanese government finds, oh, this company A is very, very good. On the other hand, if company A has a competitor in Japan, company B, Japan government don't want to have a priority or a budget to the company A only. But the reality is Japanese government or Japanese space market is not huge like United States, and we cannot survive. Like we cannot maintain the big space ecosystem like United States. I think this is a kind of challenge for Japanese government, and also commercial companies, Japanese companies are sometimes struggling. And I think this is a kind of the one reason why the government sometimes hesitate to have a deeper communication with the A or B companies.
I'll focus back to what I was saying. We have several partnerships in Japan. I'll just talk about Japan for a moment. And I found the dialogue to be very rich, right? The company to company level work that we have has been tremendous. And so I've spent a lot of time in Japan, and we've had a lot of our Japanese partners spend time within our factories in the United States, whether it's in Arizona or here in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I found my dialogue with JAXA and JMOD and others to be pretty open, right? We're navigating this path together. But I'll reflect back to when I left the Air Force about 10 or 11 years ago, and I had a mentor because I said, "Hey, I want to do international space," and he said, he said, "We're never going to do international space. It's too hard. It's too classified. We just won't get there. So go get a real job and go do that." And so I listened but ignored it. And went to a place like and with Northrop, where from a SATCOM perspective, right, we've put over 50 geosynchronous satellites into orbit over the last 20 years for 21 different nations. And so the partnership that I think we already have is strong. So I'm a little more bullish on sort of the relationship. I think I will speak, my thoughts on what's happened over the last 1 year, 2 years in the United States is we are out there pushing hard. There's a lot of policy that has opened up with respect to what we can sell, technology that is available to our partner nations. So when I look at sort of the long trend, I'm very bullish, and I think we're on the right path forward.
Great. I'm going to ask a few more questions. I want to invite the audience members to think about your questions as well as our participants online. And please share your name, affiliation, and question. And as those questions come, I will look through those and filter it over to our panelists. So what are the strongest enablers and barriers to effective collaboration between US, Korean, and Japanese space companies? I'm going to start with you, Troy.
Yes. First, the strongest enabler is our shared security goal in the Indo-Pacific. We have a mutual need for space situational awareness in terms of civilian side, in perspective of military side, SDA, to monitor space threat. This security consensus naturally drive our commercial partnerships. On the other hand, the biggest barrier is regulation and protectionism. Strict export controls and data security laws often block the free exchange of technology between our companies. If each country focuses too much on protecting its own domestic industry, we risk competing instead of collaborating. We need a smarter framework to allow trusted partners to share technology more freely. So I propose 2 key areas for our cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The first, the Golden Dome initiative, as the U.S. Space Force adopt a buy before build strategy. I believe Korea and Indo-Pacific allies should actively participate in the U.S.-led Golden Dome project. This will enhance our collective missile defense efficiency using commercial space technology. Second, our regional navigation cooperation. With Korea developing KPS, stands for Korea Positioning Systems, and Japan operating QZSS, our satellites share a similar orbit over this region. We should collaborate on space situational awareness and navigation interoperability to ensure safety and stability in the Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific. That's it.
I think, especially since 2023, the very strong political alignment between three countries. And regular government coordination makes it easier for industry, companies to work together and share data among the three nations. And another enabler is that the different countries' industrial strengths complement each other. For instance, United States has SpaceX and Blue Origin. It's a giant, big company, space companies. South Korea brings a fast-growing space ecosystem. For instance, mobility, sensors, data services, including Hyundai and Hancom in space, which iSpace has been also working with. Japan contributes strong capability in construction, heavy industry, electronics, such as, and those complementary relationship is a key. The challenge is, as Joe mentioned, that export control and licensing rules are different, and the budget cycle is also different, which slows the joint development. And we also, especially for talking about the moon, we lack on common standard on the moon, such as power, docking, and data sharing. And we definitely work more among three nations.
I'll add, it's interesting. Space is big, right? It's physically just a very large space, but this space ecosystem is quite small if you think about it. And so, Colonel Choi here on the screen, I think when he was at the end of his active duty, he hosted me at the Korean Space Ops Center. And so, we already have this relationship. I've now known, the Colonel Nakazato, who now feels like for years. Sean, we've intersected many times. And so I think the partnerships and the collaboration exist. I think the one thing, maybe specifically with Japan and Korea and the United States, that's really special to me, if I look at it, is our focus on space sustainability and sort of trying to be good stewards of it. If you look at what the U.S. and Northrop Grumman does with our space logistics company, where we can attach to the back of a satellite that's running out of fuel and extend their life for 5 years. We've done that for 9 years now, extending the life of a satellite, so that one, you don't have to deorbit it. It doesn't have to come into the Earth. It doesn't have to, be a danger. It saves rocket cost for another satellite. And so I know both countries are also very focused on that capability. And so I think if we can rally around the goodness, right? We've talked a lot about military and a lot about the commercial, but if we can just talk about the goodness of space and what we're trying to do, you heard it in the first panel, right? With going back to the moon, potentially going further. That's just, it's so amazing to me, and just really happy to be a part of it. So I think that this trifecta of Japan, Korea, and the United States focused on the goodness of space, in addition to the commercial and the business and the military. I think we have a lot to start from.
So this trilateral relationship has so many other aspects to be worked on, right? It's not only space. I love space issues, so I will continue to ask for space to be at the forefront of the agenda, but that's not always going to be the case. How can we help? How can the commercial partners do, what can the commercial partners do to elevate space issue to be more in the forefront of the trilateral agenda in general?
I'll start. I think from a commercial perspective, and I know for some of you who may have been in government and worked space, I think industry has a really important role to bring capabilities and companies and partners and nations together in a way that nations may not be able to do themselves, right? Because look, even inside the United States government, space is big. There's a lot of capability. There's classified capability. There's unclassified. There's civil. There's commercial. And industry is really positioned well to understand all of it that's going on and say, hey, if we took a little of this commercial with this civil, with this classified, you could do this capability. And I think we have that same responsibility internationally amongst partner nations who bring their own strength. And I think we can be I don't know if it's the glue or sort of the ability to network it all together.
I think industry's contribution is supply chain because the government has budget and project, but supply chain owned by commercial industries. And the second point is innovative idea. Chinese has a bunch of budget and people. However, innovation, I think those three countries has innovative idea at especially industry side. And this is a kind of a leverage of our three nations work together.
Colonel Choi, did you have something to add?
I think the US, Japan, and Korea is very strong alliance. The Korea is very specialized in the building and manufacturing, and US have a big funds, and Japan also have a technology. So I think a tri-year cooperation will make a new space era, Indo-Pacific new space era, and then I need to in demand in person meeting about how we make a new project in new space era. So the most important thing is make a meeting and conference or any seminars about the new space between the US, Japan, and Korea, I think.
Well, IPS would be the happy convener of that forum. So, we're looking for sponsors. Anyone wants to sponsor that kind of a conversation, please let us know. I have one last question, and I'll turn it over to the audience and all virtual and in-person audience here. Now, by 2040, what do you think will fundamentally change in the global space industry, and what technologies or capabilities will be critical for space companies to remain competitive over the next 10 to 15 years? Are there emerging players that we haven't really talked about, whether they're states or non-traditional industries, and what we might be overlooking? Colonel Choi?
Oh, yes. This is about future growth. This picture is about the future growth engines and roadmaps of Korea, CASA. As you can see, CASA aims to foster a commercial space industry ecosystem and foster the Korean space industry. And this is its core mission. With the global goal of 2032, it announced its long-term plan to lay the groundwork for lunar exploration and lunar resource mining by developing a lunar lander using indigenous launch vehicles, and for the Mars exploration by 2045. The space will evolve from a place of exploration to a phase of production, such as space factories utilizing microgravity. For the next 10 to 15, wait a moment. I need to. Yes. For the next 10 to 15 years, the critical capability won't just be a hardware, but data AI. I see. Can you see the pictures?
Yes, we do.
Let me see.
We can see it.
Yes. For the next 10 to 15 years, the critical capability won't just be hardware, but data and AI. Success will depend on AI-driven analysis. They can process satellite images in real time. Also, we should watch out for non-traditional players, companies in AI, ICT, and autonomous driving. They will likely become the new leaders by leveraging space data better than traditional aerospace companies, I think.
By 2040, space will look less like one-time missions and more like shared infrastructure, both in Earth orbits and between the Earth and the Moon. For instance, the satellites will be used as common services. As we discussed, large constellation for observation and commercial communication become more basic infrastructure for us. Key is long-term services and upgraded frequently. Second is lunar activity become routine. With stable power on the moon, all common technology standards, regular cargo delivery, data collection, and resource utilization business, for instance, helium-3, lithium, and those become possible. So this will open new commercial opportunities, as Kanacho mentioned that non-space players will join to the business on the moon and to develop the lunar infrastructure.
I think a couple of the topics I would have mentioned have already been. I think AI will have a tremendous impact on what we do in space, and I think whether AI is done in space or the data from space and how AI is using that data to inform a whole host of different things, I think will be radical. But it's a great question, because if you think about 2040, which seems sort of out there, it's only 14 years from now. And if you think back 14 years ago, right, if I do my math, that's 2012. Somebody help me out. And you think about that, that's just as SpaceX and Blue and others were starting to get their rocket business up and going. And that was a fundamental transformation, right? That reduced price of mass to orbit has changed how we do satellites today. And I think as that cost curve bends even further, it is also going to have a radical change on how we build satellites, the cost of satellites, how long satellites will last, constellations. And so I think two things: AI and the reduction of mass to orbit will have will be two very large impacts.
Thank you. Now I want to turn it over to the audience. If you have any questions, I'm going to give up my microphone so you could ask a question so our virtual audience can hear. So any questions? Someone pointing at something? Oh, yeah. Come up to the front.
I'll sit in the front too. Yeah, my name is Ben Sando from the Global Taiwan Institute. It's a DC-based think tank. It's not Taiwanese. And as you can imagine, I'm curious about the Taiwan space industry. I know there's interest by the Taiwanese government to develop certain capacities, and I'm not actually studying this, so I'm using this opportunity to ask. I presume this would not be something falling under the trilateral cooperation framework, but there might be some, maybe between the United States or Japan, potentially some kind of bilateral cooperation on this ongoing that I'd love to ask you about. Yeah.
So I will sort of sidestep the bilateral government, because I'm just not that well informed to speak at it here, but I will say that we are engaged with Taiwanese industry regarding space today. So that dialogue is active. It's not as robust as we are in other areas, because it's just nascent. And so, but we've had really good dialogue with industry. But it has the same sort of backdrop, right? Which is a national desire for space capability, whether it's military or commercial. And then a desire to have sovereign capability, right? To have it be owned and operated in Taiwan. And then to take that next step, not even next step, right? To start with the step of having as much as possible built in Taiwan, right? And that does a lot from it keeps the inflow of currency in Taiwan, and it also helps to grow the technological base behind that. So those are two things that we support is in that partnership. So we're actively working there.
Taiwan has a great supply chain, especially for semiconductor design and manufacturing. And more and more data will be used and created and stored in space, not only LEO Geo, but also Luna. And thinking about the robust supply chain of Taiwan, we're happy to work with, for instance, Luna-based data center, space center concept in space. And I think there are great complementary capability among US, Taiwan, and Japan, and also Korea.
Yes, I think South Korea has a geographically disadvantage cooperating with Taiwan due to China and US. But I think we can cooperate in the civilian part, commercial part, space part. We can cooperate between Taiwan and Korea, I think.
What do you think is a most perhaps underappreciated part of the supply chain in the space industry that the three countries can potentially collaborate together? I know you mentioned semiconductor as an important aspect from Taiwan, but is there something that you can think of that the three countries can perhaps work together to strengthen and harden that portion of that supply chain?
South Korea has geographical.
A great question. And I think I would maybe right now there's a lot of cooperation in Japan and Korea and in the United States on supply chain with respect to space systems, right? Whether it's solar cells, Northrop Grumman sells a lot of structures, and structures in this context means like the frame of the satellite, the piping, the tubes, the solar arrays, and we sell those internationally all over. So I think that's one place. One area that we're working closely with, and I know Japan has some really strong capability in tanks. And if you know satellite design, right, you need different tanks for different pressures, and those are. You're not just rolling those out of the factory like they're dominoes or something. They're very complex structures, and Japan brings a lot of capability. So I think, if we could get to a spot where I think we had the right timing of capability to accelerate supply chain so that we could build satellites even faster. And right now we're just doing a lot of, transactional purchasing, but somehow better integrating that capability would be where we should go.
So thinking about the infrastructure development, now LEO and GEO, many countries and many industry working on developing and manufacturing satellites and rockets. And thinking about the infrastructure on the moon, we definitely need more and more supply chain and robust industry involvement required, especially for construction capability, transportation capability, infrastructure capability. I think those areas are the collaboration for the nations which we have been talking with today.
Colonel Choi, do you have something to add?
I'd like to talk about the geographically space interspace to Earth. The only the Korea Peninsula can see over the space and can communicate between the geographically. So I think the station to satellite with over the passing the US or Japan or South Korea, very close to cooperation between the surveillance and communication, and the SSA is very critical items to cooperate.
I want to give everyone a quick 45 seconds, final thoughts to share with our audience as we wrap up this panel. So who wants to go first? Go right ahead.
Okay. So again, space is now a very important asset, infrastructure for us. And I think LEO and GEO investment continue to grow. And our next challenge is what about the moon and beyond? And as I mentioned that NASA's initiative to bringing the nuclear reactor on the moon, 100 kilowatt by 2030, it's going to be a game changer. And think industry involvement required for moon infrastructure more and more on top of NASA, JAXA, Korean Space Agency's activities. And we're happy to collaborate with industry who are willing to work on this project.
Yes.
Go ahead, Colonel Choi.
Yes. Yeah. To prepare for this future, HANA system recently completed HANA Space Center in Jeju Island last December. We now have the capability to mass produce 100 small satellites annually. So far, I have introduced current status and perspective of the Korean commercial space industry. Once again, I am grateful to be able to attend the Space for the Indo-Pacific conference hosted by WPS. I'll be fully aware of the opinion of those who attended today, and we make efforts for commercial space cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. My final message is this. Korea is no longer just a fast follower. We are ready to be strategic partners that contribute to both the security and commercial prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
Timing myself here, 45 seconds. So first I want to thank IIPS for putting this together and having this great discussion. Thank you to the audience as well, right? Space is really important. Look, it's important to me, but that's from a business perspective, but it's important to all of us, I think, as humans on this planet. And whether you think about it from an exploration perspective or an Earth sustainability perspective, either way, it's just fantastic. And I'm going to close with what I hope is a really cool story. It's a cool story for me, but I have a 14-year-old daughter at home, and one of my last jobs I did in the Air Force is we launched a satellite, the space-based infrared satellite. Sean, I know you know what satellite that I'm talking about. And on that, I had the opportunity as the colonel to sign my name on one of the blankets, and all the senior folks got to do that. And I signed my daughter's name, Sophia Brashear, on there. And so her name is floating around in space right now. And to me, that's pretty cool. It's not so cool to her yet. I hope it will be soon. But I think about that a lot, because it's what we're doing here as this space community will have an impact to the planet. And so I just thank all of you for that.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. This was a joy and an honor to be able to host an event like this. And so thank you all for being part of it. Yeah, you are part of IIPS's history. So thank you, and have a wonderful evening, day to all of you who are joining. Thank you.